Here with John Ramdeen and Robin Black. Always a lot going on in the world of mixed martial arts. And in an update to what we were discussing, Jeremy Botter, who, I mean, all credit to him. He has been all over this story this week, and that despite warnings from the UFC legal staff. He has gone ahead. He has updated his story. First, it was the UFC accepting a bid. Now he's reporting the sale has gone through. So no formal announcement yet made by the UFC, but this is obviously, John, as we discussed, this is one of, if not the biggest stories in mixed martial arts history. This is a massive transfer of power, and just the $4.2 billion price tag that is rumored in that neighborhood, it's astonishing.
Yeah, I think when you look at all the different pieces, you know, Zuffa purchasing this company, going in debt, purchasing it in 2001, going in debt, you know, really doing their best, spending a whole bunch of money to try to create a legitimate organization. And kudos to Zuffa and the UFC, the entire organization. They are the envy of the entire mixed martial arts universe. This is what everybody strives to be if you're a part of a mixed martial arts. If you're a fighter, the goal is to fight for the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and the goal was, you know, be a business and make yourself attractive to potential buyers, and that's exactly what they did. However, I know a lot of people are speculating what's going to happen. Is Dana White staying? Is he going to leave? Robin and I were talking about this. These investors aren't going to spend $4.2 billion to come in here and shake everything up. Despite what Randy Couture and Sean Shirk are saying, they're like, get Dana White out of there. Dana White has been the face, and I think it's one of the reasons why people tune into the UFC is they need to see Dana White. They need to hear the crazy lingo, and seeing him fly off the handle, I think it adds to the UFC's image, and I don't think we're going to see very many changes for the next number of years.
A lot of things here that you just brought up, most of which are really interesting. But the last one that you brought up, people hate the Kardashians, people hate Donald Trump, people hate Justin Bieber, and some people hate Dana White. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
This is how it works now. There's no good and bad. It's almost impossible to have people hear your message in the most crowded landscape in human history of entertainment. Almost impossible. So Donald Trump says he's going to build a wall and he's going to make you pay for it, or Mexico. And the Kardashians say and do absurd things, and Justin Bieber's an idiot. You know, it's just part of the deal. You aren't looking for approval. You aren't looking for positive. You're looking for conflict. You're looking for debate. We can't go back and argue or debate at your house about something uninteresting. We can do it if you're mad and I'm excited. That's why these things are the way they are. This is a positive. It really, really is. Very interesting, the sale part, because there are a lot of moving parts. I mean, have you ever watched Shark Tank? Yeah. It's a great show. A whole bunch of billionaires sit around and pretend, buy stuff the way that we buy candy. But there's always a lot of different steps. It's like, yes, this sale is approved. Due diligence, that's one of the big steps. Sometimes that takes many, many, many months, and a deal can fall through because of that. So there's all kinds of things. But to your other point, you know what, man? What kind of idiot would buy something worth $4 billion in a world where almost nothing has ever been worth $4 billion and decide that they know how to change it? Smart people don't change a thing when they take over something. They spend a year or so learning everything they can about the business, which is why you'll pay a Dana White to stick around, so you can, if you're going to eventually move away from him, absorb everything he knows.
So this is going to be a story that's going to dominate, I think, the summer and months, years to come. The ramifications are so widespread from this story, so we will obviously be continuing to monitor it, but this will be the story of 2016 and probably beyond.
Yeah,
John.
I think the ramifications are global expansion. I would imagine, when you purchase something, the goal isn't just to own it, the goal is to make it bigger. And, some of the markets that we've talked about, one of those markets being Asia, and there's just the idea of going to the different parts of Asia, whether it be China or India or Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, where these countries have huge populations, and martial arts has been a part of their culture. You can understand why it would be very attractive to this new management company, new ownership, to go into these different territories, because they'll be able to make a boatload of cash, a boatload more of cash.
Yeah, really. We talk about fighting. That's why we're interested. But in these seismic shifts of things, it's hard to ignore. And it is fascinating. Who sits around going, let's gather up all our buddies and their companies and see if we can come up with, like $100. That's not so interesting, but $4 billion is, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What is $4 billion? Do you know what that is? I don't know what that is. That's fascinating. We will be watching it, but the biggest story of this story is going to be how much of a non-story it is for years. Because why would you buy something and change it? Your number one job when you buy something new is stabilize it. Make sure if this thing is making money in North America and Europe that you don't screw it up. You don't buy something worth $4 billion, make a bunch of changes, and suddenly it's worth $2 billion. Your job is to stabilize it. Once you stabilize it, that can take years, then you look at expansion, or you simultaneously look at expansion while you stabilize. So don't expect much to change. Nobody buys something expensive and then starts changing it.
All right, we'll isolate that sound clip, whether it's accurate or inaccurate a year from now. Something that they are trying to stabilize are fighters after they weigh in. And now Nevada, one of the major, if not the biggest commissions, is now joining in on what California has done, what Kansas has done, what our own province of Ontario did last weekend in terms
of... The only good thing the province of Ontario Athletic Commission has ever done to add to that. It's the worst commission in the world.
Well, Canadian MMA fans, or at least Ontario MMA fans, now have an open Friday night coming up because there will be no card in Ontario.
About the 10th one that they've canceled in the last few years entirely because of an Ontario Athletic Commission that intentionally is trying to sabotage shows.
So that's another subject in and of itself, and it's very unfortunate news. That card is not happening on Friday, the Global Warriors card. But
it was a good card, too. It's too bad.
Going back to the weigh-ins, I think the fact now that you have California and Nevada, I think just every commission essentially, you almost have to follow suit now, John, don't you?
And that's exactly, I think, the whole purpose of this is to start it one way, get two of the big states involved, get them on board, and if there's any hesitation, you look to those as benchmarks or precedent being set, and it's like, we have to do this. This is just better for the sport. It's better for the athletes. Everybody is going to benefit if they have these early weigh-ins. And I would imagine that over the next year and a half, everybody will jump on board.
This is one of those ultra rare examples of change that there is no negative for. The reason change is, well, we were talking about that earlier, change is something you're so careful of, is one small change makes a ramification of 100 things. You know, if you change the time of something, it changes the time of everything. You move one train, it moves all the trains. So change causes problems. This one has no downside. The fighters get to weigh in earlier. The fighters get to replenish longer. It is a positive for the audience who gets to see guys who are in better.
Pressure.
We get better fights. You can't come up with a negative, and so it's one of those rare occasions where everything lines up and it's like, you should do this.
The only thing, we talked to Tom Wright, the president of UFC Canada, and he said, you know, unfortunately, just some of the commissions, a lot of these things are in law. So they have to go and they have to change them legally, which is clearly a big task. But just like the UFC, you know, they've spent the money for USADA to get on board to make sure that it's a clean sport. They might have to do the same thing, spend some cash to get the laws changed.
All right, that wraps it up for us. He is Robin Black, John Ramdine, and don't forget all of our coverage during International Fight Week. It begins with the first of 3 straight nights of cards with Eddie Alvarez challenging Rafael Dos Anjos for the UFC lightweight gold, and it's airing here on Fight Network in Canada.